My name is Nelda Spell Mitchell. My husband Dennis Mitchell and I live way out in the country from Collins, Mississippi on a farm. And when we have a spare minute, sit in the swing or under the shade tree, there's stories that we talk about over and over. And I wrote some of them down. There was so many to put in one book, we divided them into two books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now you might want to order these books. You get them from Amazon. You just call Mr. Amazon or get him on your phone. You don't have to talk to him, just you know how to punch in. And you tell him you want both books, and Mr. Amazon will send them right to your door. And then if you want to get some of these books to give somebody a little gift that you think, now, what can I get them? You order these books for them, and Mr. Amazon will send them right to their door. And now my grandson showed me how to put them on YouTube. Our grandson, Weston Mitchell, has a small cattle farm in Mississippi near us, and he makes little short videos when he's working with his cattle. He puts it on YouTube. It's called Big South Ranching. You might like to look at those, what he puts on there. And he showed me how all this worked. So I'm reading some of the stories and putting them on YouTube for those of you that don't have time to read, and you can listen to it, the stories as you go down the road. Right now, I'm going to read you a story about when I was growing up. And the name of it is, I Didn't Just Fall Off a Turnip Truck. Now, this story is written with idioms. Some of the idioms are universal, and some had their origin in our family. And you can see that. I put this on the film so you can see that. And Mother always said, now be careful what you do. You know your tail will follow you. Now, tail can be spelled T-A-I-L, and that's your behind. And T-A-L-E, that's your story. People would tell on us. Mother would find out everything. Then there's a picture of Dennis and me. We're staking tomatoes. Got the tomatoes just set out. We're staking them in a big garden. Now, when I was growing up and Daddy was farming and we had this big turnip patch, I thought, I will never marry a farmer. But guess what? I did. And we had a big garden for many years. And I did the best I could, and I helped him. Because that's what I learned to do as a child. You just do what needs doing. Now, this story is about one of my first childhood experiences with peddling produce. It is written with the aid of idioms, most of which are universal, but some had their origin in the daily predicaments of my family. That's my mother and daddy and my brother and sisters when I was growing up. It was in the 40s and 50s, and you can bet your bottom dollar there was no scuffling around and no feet dragging and surely no idle bread eating, even though you might look like the chickens had gotten your bread. The Apostle Paul laid down the rules for our work and play. Many moons later, I was shocked out of my tree when I discovered that the Reverend A. Paul did not consult my mother when he wrote his epistles, and also that many of his rules accredited to him were either misquotes or mistakes. My parents, Olin and Ella Spell, survived the Great Depression, and they raised 6 children by milking dairy cows growing cotton, sweet potatoes, grain, and hay crops, and one big patch of turnips. When the bank at Collins, Mississippi broke in October 1929, carrying with it my parents' savings to make the next year's crop, all the money they had was one uncashed cream check, and they had a mind to work. My parents' faith in God was the basis for our family experiencing the miracle of the loaves and fishes, for He multiplied that $2.63 cream check into provisions for a lively, happy life. We were blessed with the gift to make something out of nothing. Work, children, work. Work, children, work. Laziness will kill you. That was a verse we obeyed as we heard mothers saying, get up. We hit the ground running each morning with the intentions of keeping our noses to the grindstone. No one dared look up, for seeing the moon in the daytime was a sure sign of laziness. Even when we bit off more than we could chew, we did not get in too big a swivet as not to do a jam-up good job, for our mother would hold our feet to the fire and make us lick our calf. We worked to the rhythm of music as we sang to the top of our lungs. We could all sing by open letter. Open your mouth and let her fly. My sisters could play the piano well, and our brother could play the violin by nose. That meant he knows it by heart. But none of us could play by ear. Later in this story, you may wonder who in the Sam Hill were the couple who bought the turnips. Well, I do not know. Daddy made the deal, and when it turned sour, all he would say when we asked him about it, he would say, that's when I put on a paper dress and got caught in a shower of rain. Now, this meant that it was a very embarrassing situation that was best to be forgotten. However, it has been rehashed and run in the ground. The story is written in prose. I would have made it rhyme if I had had the time. Well, here it goes. There was one winter when we were having one of Grandma's times that the wolf kept scratching at the door. To keep from robbing Peter to pay Paul, Daddy planted a field of turnips, and fine turnips they were. By the time they were knee-high to a grasshopper, we had visions of more dollars than we had cents. S-E-N-S-E, cents. Daddy even said he would siphon off enough money for us young'uns to go to the picture show when we sold them. When they were big enough to harvest, a city slicker and his wife drove up in a 2-ton cattle truck with tall side planks. He really pulled the wool over our eyes. He said he would buy the whole shooting match, lock, stock, and barrel, right then and there. Johnny on the spot. He was raring to make a deal. It would be cash on the barrelhead. Oh, we backed our ears and went through those turnips like fighting fire. We really had to shake a leg and stay in a hustle all day from can to cane to pull up, wash with the hose pipe, and tie into bundles until the truck was piled high with good measure and some to spare with turnips. Daddy said that he should have smelled a rat when they pulled into the yard. They were both dressed fit to kill. The man had on whistle breeches had his hair all greased down and slicked back. He stepped high in his two-tone shoes. He strutted around like he was the dream of fair women and the finest bull to ever jump the fence. And his doll, well, when she slid off that truck seat, she would have been a sight for old folks. She had been melted and poured in a high water, skimpy shimmy of a dress. Her spike high heels made her legs long enough for fence posts. In fact, we wondered if she had a four-kid heart. She was all painted and powdered up like a Hainton Georgie. Now, gentlemen and boys, she was a floozy, hot to trot. She had enough ninny showing to make old men whimper and hungry babies cry. I heard Daddy tell Mother that man must have been out tomcatting around and found that dust doll in a shimmy shack or juke joint, and that she probably even had a red comb. That scandal and that old heifer sat around all day like two sick kittens a-courting and never lifted a finger to help. May have been because she had at least 4 broken fingers that were holding up some big rocks that looked like diamonds. Why they had the gall to put their feet under our table and eat like field hands at lunchtime. Mother had put the big pot in the little one and cooked enough to feed Cox's army. We had lots of sea sauce steak and sunburnt cake, fried rats and snake gravy, and a jar of just berries. Not really, but we teased about it. They ate like it was going out of style. He must have had a hollow leg and she a rubber belly. When they got as full as a tick, they sat back grinning like a mule eating briars. And that old coot said, "If my ma's tit had a been this good, I'd be sucking till yet." We worked our little hearts out. We knew old Rawhead and Bloody Bones would be coming across the tater patch soon, and it would be cold as flugy. We would have to tote in lots of stove wood and take spit baths by the fire, and if the ground spewed up, Daddy would milk across his arm and carry the frozen streams of milk to the house like firewood. We harvested that field of turnips before the cows came home. We were worn to a frazzle and frothing at the mouth. That loaded truck looked as if it squatted to rise and couldn't quite make it. The front end was grinning and the tailgate was drooping like an old hen with a broke egg inside of her. We were soon jumping chairs, getting our rat killing done. Our heels were really popping. Just as soon as that check cleared the bank and Mr. Earl McCraney was paid his run, if there was any do-re-mi left, we were all going to the picture show if we could figure out how to keep from getting caught by the speed cop for not having any tail lights on the old Chevrolet. We weren't worried about the front lights. We could go by the grass beside the road. To cap it all, wouldn't you know, that old gooch paid with a bogus check. He said he'd have to keep his cash in case he needed a soda pop on the road. Well, soda pop my foot. That's why he took off like a ruptured duck and lit a shook of getting out of here, like a scalded dog. He really acted like he was 3 sheets in the wind, but no one had seen him take a nip. Well, I dare say, Mary Margaret, get the broom. If that didn't beat all, we were all madder than a wet hen. That check wasn't worth a plug nickel, no matter how you sliced it. It really cut our water to a drizzle. All our work and that fine load of turnip greens was like pouring water into a sinkhole. When it came to dealing with that old peckerwood and that little snake-bit woman. Since this happened when men were supposed to be as good as their word, there was no affordable recourse. When we wrung our hands and cried, "Lord Lordy, what shall we do?" Daddy said, "Just wipe your mouth and go on," and that the more you stirred in manure, the worse it would stink. We had the comfort of knowing that Mother was an expert at making the Indian ride the buffalo. That's how hard she could squeeze a nickel. Had an Indian on one side and buffalo on the other. We never did have the Miss Meal cramps. We never had to tighten our belt. In fact, we turned over a new leaf, and forevermore, this situation forevermore broke us from sucking eggs. The next Saturday afternoon, we knew better than to mention going to the picture show. We didn't even think it out loud, for the epistle had already been laid on the line. Thou shalt not move until thou hast moved the wood pile. So that Saturday afternoon, we children moved the wood pile from one side of the yard to the other. The end, Brother Ben shot a goose and killed a hen. The hen died, the goose cried. The end, Brother Ben. Now I'm going to tell you more about the turnip story. This story took place around 1950 after Daddy had built the dairy barn. He had an abundance of cow manure and spread it on the fields, especially the field behind the house and the reed breaks where the turnips were grown. Daddy planned to sell them to the canning plant in Laurel, 30 miles away. It was the middle of November that the turnips would be just about right to pull up and have good edible roots from the size of ping pongs up to softball size. A professional peddler from the Mississippi Delta stopped in Collins looking for produce to buy. Someone directed him to our farm. He told Daddy that he would pay cash $100 for what would fit on his 2-ton truck that had tall cattle side planks. His wife was with him, and they would spend the night at the local motel if we could load his truck the next day. This was sure money, and the canning plant pay always varied according to the law of supply and demand. The man and his wife were both dressed in suits that would have been appropriate to wear to see the governor or even the president. In other words, they looked like they had money. So Daddy believed him and got a half dozen black men to pull the turnips. And he kept my sisters and me out of school to bundle, tie, and wash the turnips. This was the only day we children ever had to miss school to work. My oldest sister Olene and my brother Joe were away in college, so it was Vivian, Jane, Eloise, and me. Even though the calendar said it was fall, the weather that day was freezing cold, cloudy with a drizzling fine rain all day. We had on plenty of clothes and our rubber barn boots. But washing turnips with a hose pipe and tying bundles of grains with hay twine is best done without gloves. So our hands were extremely cold. We worked cheerfully because Daddy was going to get $100, and to that it was an enormous amount to get for turnips. The peddler and his wife did sit around all day, mostly on some boards under Daddy's shop. And they did eat lunch with us, and Mother did have a table full of food. It took all day. We started a little after daylight and finished about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just in time to milk the cows. The man did tell Daddy that he had the money, but he might need his money for gas or other needs before we got back to the Delta, so he would just write him a check. Daddy got the check back from the bank because the man had no money in the bank. The end. Brother Ben shot a goose and killed a hen. The hen died, the goose cried. Amen, Brother Ben.